What fun do we have on for
Planning
tonight?
commission.
Well, I don't plan it, but I hope nothing is controversial and dating.
Probably won't.
Indeed. Thank you, sir. You bet, thank you.
We don't have, oh, you know what, well, we should be here. Do we have yours out?
No, it's,
Okay, I'll get it. I wasn't here, I'm sorry.
yeah, because your appointment's taking place with the citizens.
Hi.
Good, you? I always, it's funny, Mark always puts me next to him because I like to kind of back off. And I'm like, I always want to sit on this side. No.
I know.
How are you, Mark? I always want to sit on this side.
Oh, I've been forced.
Are those Girl Scout cookies there? Good man.
Cameron, I'm always on camera. And Cameron Grant stands right there taking pictures for the Times Tribune. And people are always like, I'm sick of looking at your
Oh God, I just finished some before I came down.
What kind of smart aleck?
Be glad to come. Jenna's coming?
Apparently not.
Hi Dan, I'm Cindy Sullivan.
Cindy, how are you?
On the plan commission for about 20 years.
Considerable amount of time.
Institutional knowledge.
It was your father that first started it. Way back when.
I told you I live in Ramsey River.
Not sure what that has to do with anything, but okay.
Named after, unless it's named after you.
No, probably not.
Well, it's 7 o'clock. Is David coming or?
Pardon me?
Maybe Aline would know if David is coming.
Yeah, David's here. He's here somewhere.
Watching Patty, right?
Yeah, Bert's here. Okay.
Seems like I just saw you last night.
Really? See ya. Seems like it was a week ago.
I think we have a majority of the city council here today.
Yeah.
This is the second most exciting public meeting in Middleton tonight. The big dog wars going on over at Cromrie.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
The dog wars? What is that?
Yeah, if they're gonna allow dogs in the Dane County, is it the Dane? Yeah,
The Dane County portion
Park.
wants to prohibit dogs on
Oh,
leash.
yes.
That's my little.
Hi, David.
Oh, right here.
Okay, so everybody's here, right?
Dennis Jones now.
Dennis is, oh, okay.
Otherwise,
Okay,
our
well,
meeting would be
it's
packed.
7 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting of the Middleton Plan Commission for Tuesday, May 8th, 2018 to order. And the first item is the roll call.
Commissioner Paulson,
Here.
Hubbard,
Here.
Farrar,
Yeah.
These cookies you were.
Here.
Ramsey,
Here.
and Reed. 6 present, 1 absent.
Okay. So the next item is the minutes, the approval of the minutes.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the minutes are approved. So now we are on to item number 2. This is the extraterritorial certified survey map for Roth, 6665 County Highway K, Town of Springfield.
And the recommendation is for approval. I hadn't had a chance to check, but maybe subject to the town approval.
I'd make that motion.
Okay, need a second.
I didn't even outline it.
So now, they were supposed to meet yesterday. Did they meet
I
or
don't
do?
know, sorry, I was out of the office.
The joint zoning board, we met yesterday.
Yeah.
Right,
But this
the
issue is not.
CSM Yeah, CSM was for the town, though, if town approved it.
Springfield.
Or did they have plan
They were
commission
meeting-
yesterday?
Yeah, they were meeting last night, but, you
I
know,
didn't
if
get a
it's subject, if it's subject to it, then
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay, so it's subject to their approval, so. Any other questions? Eileen, you have any comments? Eileen?
Did we ever get a second?
Yes.
Yes, indeed, did, so. Okay, so
Leaf
the
wasn't sure.
motion is approve the extraterritorial certified survey map for the town of Springfield with the conditions that it would require the approval of the town of Springfield. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes.
I still.
I'm stressed because
So the next item is the design review, revision, replacement of garages at Springtree Apartments 2615 Amherst Road. Mark, or you want to do it?
These received concept approval from the planning commission and then a zoning board of appeals variance because they had previously done probably before our zoning regulations, so it's the lot line. And they're going to match the existing in terms of materials and colors. It's essentially replacing what's there. Recommendation is approval.
So move.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I didn't actually see this.
In the garage thing?
Well, there are
There's
some,
sketches in
there
the
are sketches in
the
there.
applicant was gonna bring some pictures, but I'm not sure if he's.
Oh, I never
Is applicant
I never
here?
got that.
Did get in your packet?
Oh, it wasn't in your packet?
It was not in my packet, but that's,
You want to go ahead and come to the microphone, please?
The last one. Yeah, I don't know where it is. Oh, there it is.
oh, it's part of that survey
No,
map.
it's not part of it,
Hi, I'm Tom Lamberson. I'm representing American Garage Builders. We are the builder. And I apologize, I did not get any pictures of the existing structures, but the color matches are essentially the same.
And the material.
Materials, vinyl siding, matching softened fascia shingles.
This is basically a maintenance issue or replacement issue, right? Because they've been,
Yes, we're replacing the existing structures where they're in basically irreparable condition right now.
And you're also expanding them a little bit by 12 feet or something.
Lengthwise, a couple of feet on each building, yes, to meet existing codes.
Okay. Any questions?
somebody didn't second it yet, I don't think.
second.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, any questions to anyone? Okay, then the motion is to approve the design review revision for placement of garages at Springtree Apartments. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes.
Thank you.
So this is item number 4, final specific implementation plan and design review, including traffic impact analysis report, signage, landscaping, and outbuildings. This is the Inspire Early Childhood Learning Center on Uncle Road.
And the applicant is here if you wanted to have a presentation. Otherwise, if you could approve it subject to the same conditions that the town placed on it, which I think are final landscaping materials to be decided prior to construction. The signage is very appropriate in terms of, our city ordinance. Mark has reviewed it. And the landscaping plan, I think, it fits in very nicely, I think. And the outbuilding also. So, anyway, if you want to, here.
Okay, you guys want to present it?
And did the joint board review
Yeah,
it?
the Joint Zoning Commission reviewed this last night and voted, I think unanimously, to recommend approval.
Okay.
And I do have the Town Plan Commission minutes that had 4 conditions that they wanted to see.
Okay.
It's regarding landscaping, outbuilding, signage, and access improvements. So what they recommended is that we just recommend approval of the SIP subject to the 4, conformance to the 4 comments of the Town of Westport Plan Commission of April 9th.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, so what do you think of the TIA? You looked at it, right? So there's a,
Yeah, so the TIA, if I recall, trying to remember, do you want to,
I think that it didn't recommend any improvements. I don't even think it recommended a deceleration lane.
yeah.
There will be some improvements that are made to M, part of the county's project. But essentially, I think there's enough gaps and enough people coming at different times of the day that I didn't think it was, and Bob Davis is here and the architect's here, if they can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the town isn't recommending major improvements or any improvements for this project.
Conclusions are on the screen.
Oh, thank you.
so now, I think one intersection was rated F, right? And the other
Yeah.
is rated E,
Mhm.
so,
But
So-
that's not because of this project, and that's the,
so the county will, it's the county's job to improve them, or what?
Well, there was some concern about access improvements in terms of driveways
okay.
recommended by the TIA, and turning bays at the owner's expense. So what the minutes say is that the town board may require turning bays at any time at the owner's expense should the board deem they are necessary,
Sure.
as identified in the TIA
Just
report.
not at this time, so it could be in the future, so
Yeah,
that could be
in the
approval
future,
too.
right?
Mhm.
And that appropriate right-of-way for Onken Road frontage should be dedicated when it becomes necessary. So, that's on the town.
Fine.
Okay.
Fine
That's
question.
one of the things, thank you.
I mean, I think it's helpful to remind citizens that just because a road intersection has a low level of service, a traffic impact analysis cannot require a developer to mitigate all of the existing traffic problems on a corridor. It's only those directly attributable to that development,
Excellent point.
as according to the United States Supreme Court.
Thank you.
Essential nexus. Huh?
Okay. Any?
I do,
oth-
actually.
Yeah, good citation. Any other questions, folks? David?
I cringe a bit at the size of the signage, but it's a big site.
Okay.
So,
Would-
So quite visible then, right?
certainly quite visible.
And Mark, do you have
Which,
any comments? Because he did review it and felt it was appropriate for the,
And I presume the perspective of the entry sign with Inspire across it is just an example of poor photo montaging skills, right?
Supposed to be mine, yes.
Okay. The drawing shows something quite different, so it's fine.
And we heard last night that the fire department apparently approved the height of the sign, that they can get their equipment underneath there.
that's good.
It's being illuminated externally, right? I didn't see
Yes.
where it said what it was.
Right, and there's, again, I'm sorry you don't have it, in the Town Plan Commission report, it says, one of the conditions is that the lights must be approved by Tom Wilson of the town for compliance with the town lighting code, which requires signs to be off from 10 PM till 5 AM. And they have a strict code about spillover in terms of lighting.
Dark skies, all that stuff.
Huh? Lightage, is that a word? Signage, lighting.
Dark skies.
Hmm?
Dark skies.
So the signs don't inspire you, David?
Uh-oh.
Let's not start.
That's not,
Thank you.
yeah, that's good.
Any questions? That looks really good. It looks great, actually.
It's an imaginative, lost it again, I'm afraid. Yes, here we go. An imaginative planting plan. And it would be interesting to see it in real life.
You want to come here, maybe?
A Kentucky coffee tree, anything I've ever seen, a Kentucky coffee tree.
Native to Wisconsin.
Yes,
Yep,
you do? Yeah.
What's the name of the tree?
Kentucky coffee tree.
Yeah.
Okay?
I trust anything you say about
Good to know.
woody plants and stems, 'cause I can test on that.
Yeah, I did.
So you're happy? Okay.
And just for
How
Eileen's
about you,
note,
Dan and
the
Cindy?
joint zoning committee
Okay.
did move to strike the phrase "for safety of the driveway" from the plan commission minutes. I can show you the minutes.
Thank you.
So you seem to be happy, nodding your head, so. Okay, then the motion is to approve the SIP and design review, including the traffic impact analysis report, signage, landscaping, and outbuildings for Inspire Early Childhood Learning Center. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. Okay. You guys are all set.
I think it looks nice. It'll be a nice
Yeah.
addition.
It will
Yeah, it
be
looks very nice, yeah.
you guys. And I can take the next one.
Okay. Now, the specific implementation plan modification for master's apartment building, third building, move to the south, 525 Bishop Bay Parkway, parking moved adjacent to the clubhouse. Eileen.
And Kurt and Leaf can help with what happened last night, but in my staff comments, what I said was approval as a minor SIP modification, contingent on resolution of engineering staff recommendations, certified survey map to reconfigure the lot, and review and approval of stormwater plans, confirmation of the proposed retaining wall location and design, approval by the fire district of the emergency access, including surface and internal drives and access to building 3. Also, last night, apparently there was discussion, or today we got emails about not changing the elevation of the building, not putting it up, and I talked with Terrence before the meeting, he said it's not gonna increase. And then there was also a question about the plantings that are between the fire, access.
Fire
point
access easement?
And the tree easement, if there's any plantings on the retaining wall. And I think it's subject to the fire department approval of all of the internal drives too, to make sure that they can turn. But I think it's a nice compromise on developer's part. It finishes this site and creates more parking over by Clubhouse.
The clubhouse.
Yep, and it did receive support last night.
Yep, last
from-
night, I think the vote was unanimous
Yep.
in support from the joint zoning committee.
Okay,
So I'd make the motion that we,
okay,
this, subject to all of the things that you all.
A second.
okay. Any comments now?
Can we recalculate density in each of the neighborhoods? I'm just kidding. That was so much fun.
Well, actually, we are gonna do that, we're required to do that, so we are gonna come back later with the whole.
Did you see that it actually went over 4? It was supposed to be 3.97, right?
No, it's 4.2.
It's 4.
And we'll talk.
Okay, so David,
Now, how many times have we looked at this car park?
okay, all right.
And,
Okay, anyone
know,
else? Okay, so the
Well,
motion,
we talked about last night, Terrence pointed out that because the building's gonna be a little closer to the hill and behind a retaining wall, that actually for the neighbors up above, they're gonna see less of the
I
building.
think they
So
will.
it's actually,
It's
and
gonna
there's
be-
a lot of tree easement there anyway, so,
But it doesn't impact the tree.
not at all.
Yeah, it doesn't, it's not close to the tree easement, so that's good.
And there's still emergency fire access from Callaway Court.
Yes.
so it made the town of Westport happy, right? I mean, they were not
Seemed to be
earlier,
happy.
so,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. It seems everybody's happy here as well, right? So,
Everybody's happy.
everybody's there.
okay, so the motion is to approve the specific implementation plan modification for master's apartment building, third building moved to the south, and parking moved adjacent to the clubhouse. All those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. So the next one is the request for rezoning from office district B1 to Plan Development District, General Implementation Plan. This is the Edison Ostringer Development on 6814, 6818, and 6824 University Avenue. This is referred back from the Common Council. You want to take it, Mark?
Mayor, as you just mentioned, this was referred back from the council specifically with the guidance to quote, "see if a three-story building is possible for the development," end quote. That is from their meeting minutes. In your staff comments, I provided an excerpt from those minutes. I presume you've read that. The council also asked that staff schedule a neighborhood meeting, which was held this past Saturday morning. And at your places, I provided a summary of that meeting. Since I was in, Alder Richard facilitated the meeting, did a nice job, and I participated as well. So as I was participating, I didn't always take notes. So hopefully the summaries that I provided, the questions raised, and the comments capture the flavor of the meeting. I apologize if I missed anything. And so the developer, Anthony Gray, also was available at that meeting with Dylan and answered questions from the public. The TIA, the traffic impact analysis, has been nearly completed. The main summary is that the amount of outbound traffic from this site during the peak hour, both in the morning and in the afternoon peak hour, is anticipated to be 13 vehicles. And the conclusion was that that will not adversely impact the surrounding local streets. And that's assuming that all those 13 trips want to head east. And this is our consultant that the city hires for these projects, SRF, Lee Gibbs of SRF Consulting, that reached that conclusion. And Mr. Gray provided a letter for your packet, which is on the screen. It was in your packet as well, explaining his thinking into various issues that have been raised by the public and by the council with respect to the concept of a three-story building in particular. That's in the third paragraph. That's the background I have. Our recommendation at the staff level, after studying the aerial photography and street view photos from various vantage points around the property, is that we continue to believe this is an appropriate project for this site and that rezoning will not negatively affect adjoining property owners and residents along Franklin. And so our recommendation remains that the council, that recommend rezoning of the project to the council as consistent with the comprehensive plan, contingent on the issues being resolved to the city's satisfaction that are listed in your packet. There's 5 bullet points. Those are the same issues you saw previously, although 2 have been removed because those have been satisfied by the developer.
So Mark, when are we going to have the TIA complete report? Would that be soon?
It was supposed to be available yesterday or today. I have not heard from the city engineer that it came in. I didn't receive an email on that. But the summary of it is, I put in your packet, the paragraph,
Yeah, I saw
the main conclusion.
So now you mentioned about the comprehensive plans. Those are new ones, or these are not from 2006, right? So we are updating, Eileen, so,
Well, go ahead, Mark.
go ahead.
Well, the one that's adopted is from 2006, and in my original staff reports and the various iterations of it, I had excerpted the key comments in that staff report from that comp plan that was adopted in 2006. Not sure if I'm answering your question.
Yeah, so but you were putting a new comp plan together. You have been working on it for 2-3 years now, right?
Right, we have been, yes, but
And parts of that have been approved by the council?
no.
No, okay.
But the plan, I can tell you that this project, that there's nothing in the new comprehensive plan that's being drafted. That plan would also be, this project would also be consistent with that plan, with the various elements in that plan.
I just
Yeah,
have
go ahead,
one
Ellen,
little
yeah.
clarification on the response under comments, the third bullet for traffic counts. I just wanted to make sure that people understood, not all drivers will want to head east, and they have a couple options for doing so. Therefore, it's likely at most half would use Franklin, a rate of 1 vehicle every 10 minutes. That's during the peak hours. It's only for a very short time throughout the day. Correct?
Right. One of the issues that came up on Saturday, a number of issues were raised. Traffic, of course, has been a significant concern. And I looked while we were in the meeting, I looked to see if there had been any traffic counts done. And because it's a local street, there are no traffic counts available. The city has not done any, the state DOT hasn't done any. It's likely that there are, well under 2,000 vehicles a day, and I would bet it's closer to 1,000 vehicles. I just can't tell you, but even if it were 500 vehicles a day, adding 6 cars during the peak hours, one every 10 minutes, my observation or my what I pointed out at the meeting was that the high school traffic, the kids traveling to and from the high school is a far greater impact on that street than an incremental additional few cars.
I think what this points out to the planning staff is a need for a corridor plan
Yes,
in
yes.
addition to the comprehensive plan. I think probably from Walgreens sort of into the city, that kind of area. Because some of
from
the
the-
issues that have been raised here,
From the intersection with Allen all the way out to the,
it could go all the way out.
all the way out to the Bell Line, I
It could
think.
go all the way out.
Yeah.
Some of the issues that have been raised with this development are ones that we would hope are going to come up again. And it would be nice to have some agreed principles
Yeah.
before that happens.
So so we had the build plan, so where is that sitting now?
Well, we hope to have that discussion as part of the comp plan, and we can certainly build on that. Well, I didn't mean to pun.
Build?
We-
Eileen.
I didn't mean to. We can utilize that as a starting point for that. I think that corridor
Right.
plan is a good idea. So we can work on that as part of the comp plan.
I would also add that we've received a few more emails from the neighborhood, from 2 residents who live, they're 1 block northeast and 1 block, east of Mayflower is the other one. And then we received an email from a resident on Ramsey Road up in Middleton Hills. It's no longer a public hearing, but I just wanted to let you know I forwarded those to you this afternoon.
Yep.
Should have received those.
Yeah. Did everybody get those emails?
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't look,
They came later this afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
I didn't see them.
Yeah,
Can-
go ahead.
Since we have the majority of council in the room, I want to ask a conceptual question. We sent it to council, council sent it back. Obviously, now we're going to make some recommendation and send it back to council. If we say 3 stories is not economically viable, we still recommend 4. Was there a sense that that's just going to be a futile process because council has kind of said they're not going to accept 4? Or, I was trying to understand, because I didn't watch the hearing, the sense of the motion, whether it was, let's see if 3 is viable and see if we can work it out, or 4 is off the table, so we're only going to see if 3 is viable. Since,
Joanna, you want
if,
to take it?
the Richard.
And I'm not speaking for council, I'm speaking for myself. As I reviewed some of the emails I got just prior to the council meeting, I felt a need that the neighbors had to have a session where they could hear more in-depth from the developer, from city staff, and to talk about the economics and the development as a whole. And I think we had that conversation. I don't think we're ever going to have a consensus about this building. I felt, though, that people were heard. People could ask questions. I think a concept for the corridor along University Avenue is very much needed. So I think that I can't speak for the council, but I felt a need that we had to have some community involvement before we had a final vote on the zoning.
It was more of a process than a substantive kind of going either way, about 3 or 4.
Right, and I think even on the concept of University Avenue and the principles of that, if we get to that point, and I hope we do, or the Plan Commission would make those recommendations to the council, the notification to the neighbors has to change as well. I mean, I think it's how we communicate with the public, We don't have a daily newspaper. We don't have some of the tools that some of the other cities have. We have to think outside the box when we're notifying neighbors. So I think the catchment area that we use, you know, how many feet and who's involved in that development or that could be impacted by that, that has to change, and then how we get neighborhood involvement has to change.
And if I recall, our ordinances, the state law only requires notification for rezoning petitions of 100 feet or 200 feet?
100.
We can certainly go bigger than that.
We've been doing 250.
And I think one of the things the corridor plan should identify is whether we want, once we can agree on a kind of vision for the corridor, do we want that to be kind of a form-based code or a by right development, or do we want everything to come in as a conditional use or a rezoning request that triggers an additional public? I'm not calling on.
So Elder West, the council president.
Yeah, actually, to follow up on the notification area, council's already referred it to license and ordinance. As chair of L&O, I would like to have some input from you all as to how big an area you think would be reasonable.
I think the other problem that we ran into with it, not just area, was ownership but not presence. And therefore,
Right.
the mailing went to the wrong place.
Right.
So people weren't notified.
Well,
It
I
went-
mean, we did conform with state law, which
to the-
requires
yeah.
notification of the owner of record of the tax parcels.
Right. We don't always have the record of the person who lives there. If there's a renter, we may not have that record.
In fact, the renters don't usually get a
Yeah.
say.
No, it was the ownership problem, wasn't it?
No, the notices went to the owners, I think.
Notice goes to the owners of record, according to the current ownership on the tax parcels.
Yeah, and the owners were, there were several owners that didn't live there that were present at the meeting on Saturday. I would say, in terms of that meeting, one of the issues, and it was explained much better, the height concern is in the back of the building, not the front. But there's also about a 7-foot grade going down from Franklin Avenue. So I got to,
Franklin Avenue down to University.
down to
Yeah.
University.
7-foot grade over the whole width of the block.
So I felt that a lot of the residents were fairly comfortable with, after the explanation on the finances and so on. You wouldn't, okay. No,
Well, one, I mean, we could, we've already stepped back the building in the
Yeah.
front. Which is not something I necessarily agreed to, but we could go 4 stories in the front, eliminate the cottage. No offense. And then, but that's a trade-off.
Yeah.
Then, is you'd lose that building that Mr. Gray's already put in substantial amount of money to rehab and renovate, so.
Elder Olson, you want to say anything? Okay.
I wanted to add one thing too. I had said we had received 3 emails. We actually received a 4th one. Mr. Neeson, Greg Neeson to the east, has inquired about solar, solar panels, the amount of solar, what's the word I want?
Yeah, the shading.
Shading, thank you.
Yes.
That's fine. Reaching his property. He's the 1-story building to the east, and so he raised that as an email today too.
And also, he raised a concern that by, cleaning up one blighted area, you're creating another one. So he's concerned about that, so.
I make a comment about the, I think the idea of having a plan for the whole corridor is a good one, but we have to think about the fact that we have a project application
Yeah.
before us, so
Right.
we can't say, we haven't said we're not gonna do anything until we get a corridor plan, so we
Yeah.
have to take that into account as well.
And we obviously can't use whatever that corridor plan might say as the basis for denying an application. You have to
Exactly,
use,
because we don't have the
existing.
plan, the
although
application
it is a
wasn't made.
rezoning request to PDD, so that more flexibility.
Right.
Can we bring up the applicant so we can ask them some questions?
Sure.
I mean, or, I mean, at least on the record, address what seems to be a deep concern for the neighbors about the 3-story versus 4-story. So can you talk a little bit about your understanding of the financial feasibility of scaling it down to 3 stories? How many units would that be, and what would that do to the likely rents? Because I know you've run through some cost models, but.
We looked at it a couple of different ways. The first one was to say what would happen if the first floor were just lopped off? But of course, it would require a complete redesign of the building because the first floor contains the lobby and also a sizable piece of the parking that the city wanted us to include in this project. So then we took a look at, well, suppose we lopped off the 4th floor. What would happen? The reality is it would take 11 units out of the capital, of the cost structure.
39?
Yeah. And that's not a modification, that's a different project. I appreciated that you all gave me a unanimous support the last time we were in front of you. I also appreciated Joe's position, which is she's the alder in that district, and she wanted to make sure that everyone had an opportunity to list their concerns. And then myself, 3 of the alders, and the city staff tried to address each concern as it was listed. But it at a certain point, it just comes down to numbers. It has to be supportable, right? You have to be able to support the debt by the revenue. It's not a complicated formula. And so we just kind of talked that through. It was actually a good meeting. There were a lot of good questions. Someone asked, what's TIF? So we went through how tax incremental financing works and how it works specifically in Middleton. There were other questions about what the future might look like. In other words, to David's point, when are we going to have a corridor plan so we know what we can expect going down that way? I mean, I thought it was a great discussion, but I don't know. It literally is the same project you all voted unanimously for last week.
Right, but
2 weeks ago.
the council has asked us specifically to examine whether a 3-story building is possible. So that's part of what we're trying to have a discussion, see whether it's possible. I mean, can you speak to the cost? You have some rough numbers?
I mean, I can't probably go into it. Anthony can probably speak better to it. I can just reiterate what he said. We've looked at the numbers. I mean, look at historical data outside our project. No one's coming forward with a 25-unit infill project in Middleton. The cost, and I think, I read obviously in some of the report, the people asked, well, if you build less units, it should cost you less money to build too. But the infrastructure cost is still the same. The parking lots, the drive aisles, the foundation systems, all those big money costs that you don't get extra rent for, still are in the project. You've just taken off the parts you get the rent for. You've taken off 11 units.
You'd have to build the same footings for 3 versus 4 stories, same elevator, same.
Exactly. So the infrastructure costs, the building footprint, all that stuff doesn't change. You've just taken off the part you're going to generate revenue from. And that's why Anthony says, well, we looked at, he says take off the first floor, kind of compact it down that way, take out some of that and take out some of the parking. But again, that's the part that, probably not everybody understands, that we hopefully just explained, is that infrastructure cost is still the same.
Can you remind us how many parking stalls, how many spots in the structured parking?
I think we had 59 total. And again, some of that is, again, that's us meeting, the reality is, there's some economies of layout of building, right? So we meet the city standards.
Yeah.
We could have, with the PDD, probably asked for less, but based on how.
So that's what we've done in the past, because technically, parking minimums don't actually apply to our PDD ordinance.
Right.
So one possibility is go down to 39 stalls, right? So 1 per unit, with the understanding if a person has a second car. I know the neighbors.
Cringe.
Are going to cringe because, within the 6-block radius, there is actually plenty of street parking.
But it gets into the viability. I mean, obviously the underwriting, the way that Anthony has to go through from the banks or from WEDA or whoever, look at those concepts and look at the viability that if you have a less parking below a certain ratio,
Right.
what's the chances of your leasable, we're in a competitive market, right? Obviously, there's, that question has been raised, how financially feasible is it anyway? Do we need more apartments? To make sure that he can rent these, and it's only 39 units if that's the model we stay with, you still need a certain amount of amenities to get people to want to live there. Otherwise, you're going to end up with half of them vacant because you can, people are going to look at it and say, well, I can't park there and I'm not going to walk 3 blocks in the winter and everything else, nor do the neighbors want it. So even, there's this always kind of balance between city needs and then reality and then where we think it's going to fall. You kind of over design a little bit knowing that, of course, this building is going to be there and hope for, 30, 40, 50, however many years. You've got to design for some future also. So do we think that with our 59 units that they're probably going to get all used, especially in the first number of years? I mean, no, we don't think that, but the banks want certain things because if it fails, right, the bank gets it back and they want to make sure that if they have to turn it over and to a different developer, how those things go. So it's not always 100% in Anthony's control or my control or even your control of some of these things we have to put into the project. The answer is that this model for this project just doesn't work as a 3-story. It just doesn't. It's too small based on, the factors. There is no scenario where this is buildable by this developer at this size. I mean, the reality is if someone wants to build it, you're going to probably start talking about Anthony selling off the land, a new developer coming forward. They're probably going to buy more land and probably try to acquire the neighbors and then try to expand this. You're going to get a project there at some point that now instead of a 39 unit is a 85 unit encompassing many more, and it's still going to be a large, more obtrusive. I mean, that's just the reality of our world. Your corridor plan and everything coming in, talking about that. To the Nissan comment and shadows. I mean, honestly, we could do I could do you, not that I want to, a 2-story model of that building. The Nissan property, even at 2 stories, is going to get shadow. It just is. His is a 1-story, very small building. Even if we build a 2-story building with the heights, modern day heights of 9-foot ceilings and 2-foot floor systems and parapets, a 2-story building is still going to shadow his. I mean, there's nothing we can do about that. But I think if you look at the shadow studies we've done, again, the block is deep. There's lots of mature trees. Yes, the Buzz's property on one side and Easton property on the other are really the ones that are affected. Really, most of the neighbors, the shadow doesn't even get past the mid-block.
Mark has the shadow study. Can you
Yep.
point to the Neeson property just for?
Yeah,
It's the.
I'll zoom in.
it's the very.
Mark, can you just use your
I'm just,
pointy thingy?
so his property is right here. Let me put it in the context of the,
This existing gets, okay.
so if you look at the center one here, you see where it's hard to point, but you see that?
Yep.
We have to acknowledge the saving of the little cottage as something worthwhile and something that we have to recognize in whether we approve this or not. It would have clearly have been easier for the developer to get rid of it and perhaps build something along the street, something very different than what he has now. They have said, I think the little cottage is worthwhile saving. I don't know what its heritage is, but it's probably a building that is, no, it is a building that is distinctive in the city. So I think, you have to say, okay, there's some payoff for doing that, and that payoff in this case is probably a 4-story building on the rest of the site.
Now,
Certainly, we're saying that one would not build a small cottage like that now on a major arterial street, because you generally have the height of the building proportionate to the width of the street. So wider arterials require taller buildings to create a pedestrian and human scale, and
Right, but having been in the building, it has become
Very nice.
a quality office building that wouldn't exist otherwise.
Certainly not gonna be part of any corridor plan. Yeah, I mean, we won't see any more of those.
Right.
Unless one sort of identifies certain ones along that corridor that says, yes, the corridor plan should acknowledge that.
Unique.
Preservation could be part of the corridor plan.
Yeah, and that, you know.
There's certain blocks that would be better
Could you
to
guys
be
speak in
preserved.
the microphone so that the others can hear?
All I said was preservation could be part of the corridor plan.
And to both your points, David's and Cindy's as well, I mean, if you look at kind of the model, and, you know, not to compare obviously municipalities, but the city of Madison's process is they move their historic structures, right? Okay, great, we've got a historic structure, but it's no longer in its historic location or in the context of its historic neighborhood or anything else, right? The developers met the criteria, did what they had to do, saved the structure, but, you know, is it really in the best interest of the overall, you know,
Just to
here?
To clarify, this building is
Not historic.
is old and nice, but not historic.
No, just using an example, but here, I mean, you know, Anthony, of course, I think has some emotion to it, but, you know, we went in a different way, which is, yeah, not razz it, not try to, you know, say we would move it. Let's keep it and have a very unique property, kind of a little bit of best of both worlds, if you will. So, you know, I hope, I do agree with David's comment, there should be a little bit of some points for us making that effort.
So now, if there was to be, well, there are three concerns, the height and then the traffic and the decrease in property values. So is there anything which could be done in the back side of it to minimize the effect of height, planting trees or something, or what is that which could be done?
Well, I think if you look at it, whether Mark can bring something up or whatnot, I mean, the trees are there already. They're existing. There are very, very old trees that are buffering between our property and the neighboring properties that are not on our property, so they stay. You can kind of see it from the photo and the tree canopy there, how many trees there are. Obviously, we haven't measured them, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of them reach the height of, you know, probably are the same height as our building, if not taller. So there's the point of, you know, where we're lucky, again, this block just by natural dumb luck is very deep and has very old trees. So we kind of got some natural things going for us in that regard. So, you know, we'll landscape around our building, and we've got some tall, you know, some blank walls back there that we'll soften up with landscaping and some taller, some pines and stuff, just to make that blend a little bit more. But again, luckily, naturally, there are these very tall trees already there.
The difficulty is if you look from Franklin, this is a kind of quaint, small, single-family residential neighborhood. If you look from University Avenue, this is a major arterial with a lot of jobs, a lot of transit, and balancing that. Obviously, the corridor plan will try to balance it, but, I mean, development's coming out this way. We'll have to decide whether we just want these kind of low FAR strip-style commercial developments with surface parking in the front. That's not usually, that's an older style of design that's not usually best practice now. But,
Doesn't have much of a street edge, like you said.
I mean, general design is you want to bring buildings closer to the street and closer to each other. And
I mean,
so, I mean, the issue that, since we've already recommended approval unanimously, the issue is whether we see any evidence that there's a three-story building could be viable. I mean, my view, I mean, I do pro formas all the time, is that you couldn't make the economics work with the debt service coverage, but I don't want to, I've said my piece.
So this is mainly discussion then, there's no voting then, right?
Well, there should be a vote to send it back to city council with some recommendation.
David, you got some more thoughts? Dan? Cindy?
Well, I don't do pro formas all the time, but I think they make a persuasive argument about the viability of the project. And so I think that they've told us very clearly that a three-story building is not viable to them. So I think our decision is really to recommend to the council well, they told us to look and see if a three-story building, I don't think a three-story building is viable, so I think, we need to tell them that, and it seems to me like it comes down to, a building of at least this size, or no building at all.
I mean, this is not an exact performer, I kind of sketched out some numbers. The only way you could make a three-story building work is if you had about 38, 39 units and 0 parking.
Right.
But that causes other problems, because then you'd get, I mean, in an ideal world, we would create a lot of these units right on public transit, and people would just take transit, but you'd get some parking, you'd have a difficult time leasing, your lenders would not, as much as I would love apartment buildings with no parking, no lender's gonna underwrite that, so.
And candidly, one of the consistent comments we got from the community concerned traffic and parking, right? They want, they don't want
They don't want
less
street
parking.
parking.
They don't want street parking, is the honest truth, or at least that's what I heard.
Yeah, go ahead, Arlene.
And I think the plan commission, in sending it to the council unanimously last time, did so with the understanding that it was appropriate and consistent with the comp plan, and you're looking at it again at the request of the council, but we typically aren't looking at economic issues, we're looking at planning issues and design and, traffic and all of those things. And I think what Mark is saying in his staff comments is, that's not changed in terms of the staff recommendation. It's, and I'm usually one who will say, oh gosh, is it gonna be too high? But in this case, looking at it, I think the tree cover will lock or soften a lot of that. And it's not a huge building. I mean, it's not.
I mean, the only comment I would make in response to yours is that, the council asked us to look and see if a three-story building was possible, and there isn't, typically I would agree with what you said about what our responsibility is, but there isn't any way, I don't think, to avoid the
I agree.
economic argument in this case.
I agree. I just wanted to point out that we
Yeah.
don't normally. I'm sorry.
Normally, I would agree with you, but I think
Wow,
that's what they told us to do.
that's good. Cindy, yeah.
I agree with what you're saying. I just wanted to point out to the audience and, that it's not something that we typically do, but you were asked specifically
Exactly.
to do that. So I agree with what you said earlier.
Can,
It's not it's not a public hearing, and two, the plans are all online.
well, so Mark, can you show the oblique aerial view? I think, that's the one. So, Mark, can you just identify no, on the oblique aerial view, there we go. It would be this line of trees?
Well, the red is approximately, and this was my best effort at demarcating the property line. So this is hard with the oblique view like this to know, for example, that some of these trees that where the red line crosses may well be staying because the base of the tree is closer to us, in the foreground. So it's a little hard to say which tree here would be affected, which trees would be affected. Here you get a little better idea. The problem with this drawing is that the air photos are taken when the leaves are not on the trees, so it's a little harder to see. But you can see, if you look here, there's some trees here, although there will be a stormwater detention area there. But there's trees on private property here that wouldn't be affected. And those trees.
The trees on the north end of the property, as shown in this aerial photo, would be removed?
Yeah.
I think if you go to, and Mark, if you have our PDF, there's probably a site plan in there that.
Well, I don't have yours plugged in right now.
Oh,
If you
yeah, but
want,
I
I
think,
can put it
no,
in.
but I think if you had, it's in the packet that you, so if,
So which site plan?
there should be a site plan in there. I know that, and I can't.
There.
So keep going, Mark, keep going towards the front of it. So.
Majority of the trees are gonna go away.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so here's some trees.
Yeah, and again, this survey just shows, all really we can show is the ones that are on our property. We did not obviously go into every neighbor's, backyard and survey the trees. So, there are more, I know like on Yuli's property and to the other property that aren't shown on this survey because we didn't go to that level. We didn't think it was going to be required. But you can see the trees that we are removing is probably more of a better example. There is a very large tree, kind of what you're talking about, Mark, with the stormwater. I think that one stays. It's outside of that. That has probably the biggest
Like this
canopy.
one, shown by this large canopy here, probably.
But even the one to, that one there. I mean, of course, again, that's just a graphic representation that it's a very large tree, but that tree is not on our property. It's not in the storm area. That tree remains. It has a very large canopy.
So there's a tree in the northeast corner, there's a huge tree, so that probably will stay, right? That's
off their
right behind that Greg Neeson's property, so that's not your property, right?
Yeah, Greg has some very large trees on his property as well. We can't speak to what he's gonna or
but-
not gonna do with his
I think
trees.
that's not in his, there's a one big tree there, so. So there's a one behind which we were looking at the other time, that's
This is a large
your
tree,
neighbors
yeah.
then, right?
This is a large tree.
Yeah.
Where I'm circling here, that tree is probably, this tree here.
Yeah, there's,
But again, because of the oblique angle, it looks like it's going to be cut down, but
it's,
based on where here's the base of it right here.
It's kind of the start of.
So that tree, I would guess, is remaining.
Yeah.
It's going
And
to
especially
stay.
since it's not there, it's not on their property. This is in front of,
right.
so. Yeah, this is not the best angle to, I should have done the photo from the other way.
So Leaf, you
I know
have
I'm
any-
speaking out of
Yeah, go ahead.
way above my pay grade, but did you approach Neeson to purchase the property? Because if you think of that two-story apartment and Neeson and yours, you could have a different massing, but
Yeah,
to pay for those costs, you'd have to go up to 56 to
And a
70,
bigger footprint.
56 to
No,
70
yeah.
units.
The algorithm's the same.
Oh, right,
Even
right.
if we spread out, we might be able to get a floor lower if Mr. Nissen was even interested in selling his property, but I haven't broached it, and nor do I think I have the capability. I think we're right about what we can do.
Leaf, you have something to say, or
No,
you are happy?
listening to the discussion.
So Kurt, is your feeling that along the university corridor that that's the future?
Say again?
That's the future, that 3-4 story buildings are going to happen?
Well, the future is in some ways up to what we make it. You see development coming down from university.
Mhm.
And it's the idea that there's going to be a demand for apartments that's going to continue to be robust, a demand for commercial space. And if we, as a city, say we don't want to annex new land and service new land for sprawl, you're seeing this across the country, which is these kind of strip commercial, low floor area ratio, 80-style subdivisions are being retrofitted to 3 to 5 stories, depending on the width of the street. So for me, 4 stories is the approximate design that you would have with a 5-lane road, as in this area, right, with the cartway width. You could imagine that if you put in a dedicated bus rapid transit, I'm just pie in the sky now, right? And had a high-capacity transit station, you'd actually want perhaps even higher density right in the proximate
And those
area.
stations, yeah.
Right near stations, with step down into the neighborhoods in 3-4 stories. That's one possible future. But the other possible future is that we stay as kind of 80-style, low-density strip commercial, and then we either don't accommodate our growth in housing and commercial development needs, or we go to Springfield Township and say, we're taking another couple hundred acres to, I mean, there's kind of, I have my vision.
So,
I mean, we have to do a quarter plan, anyway.
So Kurt, if I can just add from
sure,
a
go ahead.
professional in the industry and what you know, again, you guys will write your comp plan, you'll make your decisions, and you'll have plenty of input. Just as someone in the industry who deals with this type of thing, you know, if you didn't have a comp plan and people are, the model is what you probably want along here and what most developers want to bring in, right, is a mixed-use building, right? Mixed use, which was what we kind of started with first, some type of retail component on the first floor, which naturally kind of gravitates you into both from a construction type standpoint and how the architectural codes work and building modeling, what we call a podium building, which is a concrete first floor, and then wood above that. And the most you can go is 4 stories of wood above that, right? So you're talking about the max from a code standpoint is 5 stories. A developer, because you're going to dedicate probably your first floor, just like we did in our original model, to either parking and or commercial, that means that if you stayed with 3 stories only along your corridor and said that in your comp plan, you're going to end up with really what amounts to only 2 stories of residential above there. Again, looking at just what we're bringing forward. So my gut is that I deal with developers all over the city and all over the county. That model doesn't work, right? How buildings are built and how the code allows and how you want to develop these areas. 3 stories, it's just 4 stories is because you need that 3 stories of apartments. And no one wants to, I mean, we deal with it, right? No one, I mean, we're putting 2 units down there and we thought, you know, 2 units is okay, right? You don't know who wants to rent an apartment typically 10 feet away from University Avenue, right on the first floor. That's why people bring forward commercial or something on that first floor, because you're gonna have a hard time renting those units. So I'm just adding in that as you study it, I kind of see that you're going to get the feedback I'm kind of giving you, that how we build things and the cost of things and how people rent and live. 4 stories is going to be what your reports are probably going to come back and say.
And that seems to be the development model around the county right now. That's
Yeah, if you look at,
I agree with what you're saying about the 4 stories. I disagree with you saying that every 4-story building has retail on the ground floor.
no, I'm not saying
I
every
think
single
that's-
one.
That's something that we just have shown we're overproducing retail.
right.
Of that kind of retail, anyway.
And if you went to a 3-story apartment building, you could do it with wood construction without the concrete base, but then you're not gonna put any parking on there, because you don't have the loading for parking. So you could do 3 stories of apartments with a limited clubhouse and no on-site parking. You'd either have to build a separate garage, which would really require TIF, or you, as they try to do closer to downtown Madison, people park on the streets. Yeah. It's kind of, I mean, right, it's a trade-off that.
Okay, so where do we want to go now then?
Well, I think we followed our due process, so to speak, and
Mhm.
we did what the council asked us to do. We investigated if 3 stories was viable, and I think the conclusion is that it probably isn't. I think that's what, Cindy, you were saying too. I mean, you could ask the question, well, what is the minimum number of apartments needed to make this a viable project? But the long and the short of it is, I think we've done what the council asked us to do.
Can I make a motion? Or were you gonna talk?
No, I was just gonna agree with him. We've done exactly what they asked us to do.
I would move that the Plan Commission refer the matter back to council with a recommendation for a 4-story building consistent with our recommendation of previous recommendation.
Whatever date that was.
And subject to all the conditions attached thereto.
So you're just confirming the previous.
To reaffirm our previous recommendation and to report that we don't think a 4-story building is, a 3-story building is possible.
No, the front is 3-story and then the back
Right.
is 4-story. The way it is 3 and 4, the configuration which is there now, so. Okay, we need a second for that. Okay. Now the discussion.
We've discussioned
Else to
out
say.
Yeah.
pretty much
Okay, so the motion is to confirm our previous vote to the city council and refer back to the city council. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes.
Thanks.
And can the minutes reflect the consensus of the Plan Commission that a corridor study would be warranted? Actually,
Okay.
can we make a motion to,
No, it's
make a motion to recommend to Common Council that they consider funding a corridor study?
Okay, need a second?
Second, or
Okay, Cindy, you want to second?
I don't want to second it, I wanted to say something after somebody seconded it.
okay, I'll
Okay,
second it.
all right, so go ahead and say.
Eileen, how does the, is that not something that could be included in the comprehensive plan?
It could, but we don't have, I mean, we're doing it staff-wise, so we could do it, regular staff and council.
If,
Eileen, it could also be a budget request
Be a-
that the
yeah,
Plan
that's
Commission.
true.
yeah.
Gotta try and get the-
If we eventually create a TID along University Avenue, don't quote me on that, George. The design of the concept plan could be part of the,
That's true.
are we-
project cost.
And for the parts that it is in the TIF, we could do it. And we might be able to do it anyway with TIF if it's part of the larger corridor, because it's within a half mile.
A lot of it's within half a mile of TID 3 and 5.
So we, and a lot of it's in the corridor, so we could maybe, we could maybe fund it with that.
Are we out of order here? I
Might
mean,
be.
you know, I'm just wondering, this isn't an
How about if
agenda
we have it on the
item.
agenda?
This is
next
making
time?
a,
Let's
it's
put it on the
somewhat
agenda for
related
next
to
time.
it.
There you go.
Let's, I withdraw and make a motion to put
Thank
it on
you.
the agenda for next time.
Oh, okay, all right, so,
Because it wasn't noticed.
It wasn't noticed, that's correct.
Yeah.
okay, all right.
should know that.
So, put it on the agenda. Okay, so the next item is number 7.
And this is. the-
Well, I do want to say to thank you to everyone, who provided your input, sent your emails, and came to this session on Saturday. So, thank you.
On the proposed annexation, I think there's, my recommendation is that you recommend to the council approval of it, but we don't have evidence yet that the applicant has submitted it to the Department of Administration, which is just a standard procedure that they submit it, unless the state's changed it in the last year, which, they've changed a lot of things. But they submit it to the Department of Administration, they send the town and the city a questionnaire, we fill it out. Then they have 20 days to come back and say it's not against the public interest. So I guess my recommendation, just to keep it moving, is if you're comfortable, that you make that recommendation, but it not go to the council till we have that assurance
'Cause
from DOA.
We've already recommended approval of the plan.
Pre-annexation.
Pre-annexation, this is just for annexation. As far as I know, the annexation laws have not changed.
Okay, good.
So it still
Never
goes to
know,
DOA.
So I'll make the motion per Eileen's discussion.
Second?
Okay, now the discussion. Okay, so the motion is, you want to read what the motion is?
Um, Move approval to recommend to the common council the annexation.
No, not to the common council yet.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
Common
subject,
council.
Yep.
at the
Following.
appropriate time, following concurrence
Oh,
with
okay,
DOA,
okay,
sorry.
okay, all right.
So it
Going to
won't
the
go
common
next
council,
one.
but not
Okay.
quite yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I could keep somebody here.
You want to say anything or for the next item?
Well, I think we're in agreement with, we obviously, we need to go to the DOA, and I thought we had, but
And
but
maybe you
we,
have, and we just, yeah.
so we're comfortable with
Okay.
waiting to go to common council, but assuming we'll have that figured,
Or how
taken
long
out.
ago you went, or,
Well, Williamson Surveying
Okay.
submitted that, I believe, and they're not here today, but
okay, we, as far as I know, haven't gotten a questionnaire. It usually comes to me, so I haven't seen it, but, okay, we'll check on that with the state. Thanks.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. The next one is preliminary plat and plans for Atal Acres subdivision 4821 County Highway Q.
And we did not include the plans in your packet because typically we wouldn't be looking at those, but and we can turn them back next time. But the recommendation right now is referral to the 4 committees.
Actually, it is in the packet.
Oh,
It is there,
okay.
yeah.
There is a plan.
I
yeah.
guess we did put
Yep,
it in.
yep.
A preliminary plat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And how different is this preliminary plat from what we saw last time? Or is it the same?
It's essentially the same, yeah. We've
With
addressed,
some housekeeping and.
But the number of lots and the orientation of the houses is the same. And this Road B would be off of Q, and you've gotten the permit, or the access permit?
The county, yes.
Okay.
Cool.
We just need to motion to refer to those committees. I would move
well,
that we.
but, sorry to interrupt you. So we've actually submitted, we've gone to a lot of these committees, and I was kind of surprised that at this stage, I mean, our goal is to start construction this year.
But the preliminary plan hasn't been submitted, has it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, the plat that's here has addressed number of staff comments, the plans, which we can talk about. We had 3 pages of staff comments from Public Works. So we've reviewed, the stormwater management report was submitted over 2 months ago. So we feel like we are comfortable with staff comments, and we've addressed them.
Stormwater, or Water Resources has given approval?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, I was not aware of that with our staff, so.
Yeah, that's why I was surprised.
The commission or the,
Well, we went to a meeting a couple months ago, and we are,
That was about a month, it was a few weeks ago.
and then, well, based on that meeting, we submitted the report to the DNR and to the city and the county. We received feedback from the DNR, the city, and the county, I should say, and we've spent the last month addressing those comments. So we're comfortable with the staff comments we've received.
About to the Parks Commission and the.
That's the one we-
Port Joint Zoning Committee?
We don't have a park proposed on the project. We have not gone, that's the one committee we haven't gone to. I'm not
It's
sure
in the
what.
town of Westport, right?
It is in the town of West.
How about this? How about if we make that motion to those committees and add to it if necessary?
Necessary, that's perfect.
Or that if they determine that they've already, if staff determines
If-
that they've dealt with it, it doesn't have to go.
Right, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions now?
Did council grant concept approval of the
They
plan?
did, they did.
Oh, yeah.
Right, Mark? They
Yep, yep.
did.
It was some time ago.
It seemed like that was
so-
a while ago.
Yeah, you have something to say?
Several weeks ago.
I haven't seen this, I have seen it days ago. Nobody from South Africa will ask me anything. But I wonder about my neighbor, because he has to come through my property and then go down and then go up. I can't reach the plan, and I think it's heavy enough. So,
Can
now,
we,
then,
can I ask him to speak or not?
can I,
Just let me just find out here, so.
Where-
Can I ask him to speak?
Can you at least identify where you live?
4825, south of that
Maybe you could ask the applicant.
property, right there.
So,
The one at
Bill,
the shared driveway.
Bill, is it okay for
Here
him
before?
to
Yep.
speak?
Basically, stand should go
Is it
straight
okay
into that
for him to
house.
speak?
Well, you could ask.
Okay, why don't you come to the microphone then? Thank you.
So if I read the plan correctly. So how is Stan, my neighbor, is gonna get to Highway Q? Can you describe that to me?
Sure.
is there a better map than this?
There might be in the plans, the Greater West Pro Plan, maybe the 3rd page in. So at the end of what's labeled here as Road B, there's an opening that's proposed to serve the Orchards Garden, but you're not there. And then there's a driveway that wraps around. And
I'm
comes
right
back.
here, this is my home, this is
Right.
neighbor's easement. So how is it gonna go to Highway Q?
So there's an existing driveway that currently comes off of Highway Q.
True,
The hatched area there is going to be abandoned.
okay,
But then so rather than coming from Q from the east, you would come from the west. So you come along the west side of your driveway.
coming in the road. So, what I'm saying, this easement, is he gonna have an attachment to new road, direct? So I can connect to that too?
I think you could do that too if you wanted to. I mean, it's your property, isn't
That's
it?
the intent of the easements. The only thing that's really happening is the roadway is going to utilize the new road. Culvert connection in Q is being
But the
erased.
plan I got from the minutes you sent 3 days ago shows that those easements are off. Then how my neighbor from that easement on my property will connect to Road B? It's not clear on the map. Only way he can, he will take that easement and then
Which
go
neighbor are you
down
talking about?
them. So he'll take this easement in front of my home, go down and then go up, that's the only way they can do. Why don't we connect this one to straight into Road B?
Don't you share a driveway right now? You and your neighbor?
Yes.
Off of that road?
I'm not against that, neighbor, cool. Yeah.
According to what I saw, I'm the neighbor.
So you also live right next to that property?
Well, my wife.
Can you state your name for the
Oh.
record? Just-
Stan Skolowski.
Oh, yes, yeah.
My wife
So you are
is-
actually the owner of that property?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, my wife's mother owned the property, and she's the executor and do that. But I think, isn't that gonna go straight out my driveway into Road B?
It can, I believe it can.
Because he needs to get out, I need to get out. It should go straight out from our easement right now, right into Road B.
Okay. Yeah, I thought there was conversations with you guys.
Because-
I mean,
And
we
they're in the
went
city?
around the west side for a reason, but if it's to your,
Are you guys in the city or the town?
No, they're in the town.
You're in the town?
We're in Westport.
Westford, we are in Westford, so he's gonna take the garbage bin, take it down on my easement, and then go down, and then go up to get to Highway Q, what's up, like, what is it?
I have a
I don't
suggestion.
have a problem
Well,
with that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, nobody,
Yeah, just a minute, let Eileen
I was
has
just gonna
some.
suggest that maybe you all could talk about it, you know, the applicant and the neighbors, and have a solution brought back when the plan commission will approve the preliminary plat, and also when the joint committee, Middleton Westport, which is looking at that, would look at it.
All right, absolutely. Thank you.
Isn't
Because
there
I-
gonna be approval tonight?
no, just referring. I think you have our deep understanding that we will never allow a subdivision plat to be created that takes an existing parcel and ends their access to a road. That's actually a
Oh, well,
violation of
we
state
know
law.
that.
Right.
But I noticed.
Every
something
parcel
I
needs
got,
access
that
to a
there is-
road.
Right.
But there could be access to road from, to go down and then connect to B, which, then I have to have an easement from them, which I
Yeah,
don't want.
we'd have to see the easements recorded, because I can't read the easements on this.
So I want independent access to main road, like whatever that may be, B here.
Well, just talk to them. I guess the best thing is you guys get together, sort it out when it comes to the next meeting, and it should be all nice and clean.
Just to clarify something he said, the county is not going to allow more than one access. So the driveway, if you look on the, I have both of them side by side. I have the air photo, which shows your current driveway that you share. That driveway's access will be severed because the county will not allow a driveway in the street. So I think we all understand that. So this Road B is intended to be a public street eventually, and I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be able to have access directly, you know, if you look at this, and the road would be right up here. I don't see why you couldn't have access that way
It is
either.
on this drawing right here.
Right.
You've got a lines drawn in.
Right, no, I understand.
Yeah, the plat says 20 feet ingress and egress easement.
Yeah, so all this can be worked out. I think that your concerns are, I mean, I understand your concerns as Kurt Paulson said, you know, we cannot sever access that you already have, so we will work with you at the staff.
Okay,
level.
Mark will work with all of you guys. So let's get everything fixed when it comes, before it comes to the plan commission next time.
we're just in a hurry because the summer's gonna go by really fast and this all takes time. And so if we need, in order to build houses this year, we pretty much need to break ground in August. And I hate to lose a month over something that is very minor.
Have
No,
you
no.
addressed the public works comment?
Mhm.
Not having an easement on a public street?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, that's an outlot now.
all right, well, let's,
Okay, so what are we voting on?
Somebody's got a motion.
Somebody's got a good motion here.
referral to the
Referral,
committees,
if necessary.
if necessary, as Cindy said, and also requesting that the applicant work with the neighbors prior to bringing back the preliminary plat and the Middleton Westport Joint Zoning Committee.
Does that sound good? I mean, that will meet your,
That requires us to come back in a month?
Not necessarily a month, it depends on when those meetings can be scheduled. It might be next time if they can be held before that.
Which meetings? You said parks?
Parks and
What,
Middleton
why
Westport.
parks? Is that just common to refer everything to parks?
Right, because they'll need to make a determination that they want to accept park fees in lieu of land dedication.
I'm sure that's what they'll do. It's a-
We'll accept.
Oh, I
Speak
should-
for them.
And we'll work to get a Middleton Westport meeting set up.
And do I need to get the parks meeting set up? Or, okay.
I'll ask them
No,
about
they will
referral.
get that done.
Yep.
Staff will do it.
But you have to have everything together when you bring it next time.
Okay.
And we have to get the annexation done before the plat and the zoning
Right.
is done, so.
That's actually
Right.
probably the biggest.
That's the biggest thing, okay.
Yeah, so
Yes,
what
so
will
somebody
happen
needs to
is-
make sure that.
I
All
think
right, I think
your
we know what
time,
we need to do, so thank you
I
very much.
think your
DOA.
timeline is very ambitious. I'm just
Okay,
gonna
so
say
the
that.
motion was made, it
So-
was seconded. Any discussion now? David, you're smiling and,
I'm ready with the next motion.
okay, all right. All those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye.
And you're making the next motion to
Don't-
adjourn, right?
Enjoyed you.
All
No, I
right,
was gonna-
second, okay, we are adjourned.
I was gonna see if we could, honor and reflect Cindy for her
Yes.
years of service here.
Well, she still, the council hasn't approved the appointment yet, so we will honor her, but let's welcome Dan here, so.
It
Can
isn't
we-
over till the fat ladies.
Dan
Can we
has-
make a motion to recommend she be reappointed?
And Dan, welcome.
We're adjourned. I don't recall a vote.
Yes. I like your neckties.
Leave.